The next speaker is Darren Gordon, a Managing Director of Centaurus Metals.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for having us here. It's great to be back presenting at the Pay Dirt conference. This time last year we're standing here, we'd put out our maiden JORC resource in respect to our Jaguar nickel project in Brazil. We were really introducing the project at that point in time, and I think there's been an amazing amount of work that's been completed on that project over the last 12 months, and so hopefully today we can step you through some of that work and what we see for the future. Usual disclaimers. I guess when we bought this project from Vale back in 2019, we always saw it as a development proposition. We've always had this vision that it could be a 20,000 tonne per annum nickel producer, and the more work that we've done, the more we've been able to confirm that that is the case. We've recently put out scoping studies for this project, initially a base case scoping study in March this year for a production of nickel concentrate, but we've also looked at evaluating option of producing nickel sulphate on site at the project, and we delivered that at the end of May. Both of those studies showed really strong economics, but have again, I guess, given us a lot of confidence that this sort of production level is very achievable for us, and that we hope will put us as a top 10 nickel sulphide producer globally as we get the project up and running. You've heard a lot about nickel this morning. Won't spend too much time on that, but I think the main thing I'd like to reiterate around the market is that there has been a lack of exploration over the past years in nickel sulphide projects. They're not easy to find. Unfortunately for us, Vale had done all the hard work making the initial discovery at Jaguar. We've been able to do a really smart deal with them to be able to pick that up. But to have a sulphide project in this time in the market, in a low geopolitical environment, I think puts us in a really good position. So great to be in the sulphide space, great to be in nickel. We don't see nickel going anywhere, and the demand for that we feel like is only going to grow. There's obviously better people to speak to that than me, but what better time to be in the nickel market. So Jaguar, it's in the Carajás mineral province of northern Brazil. Carajás is a world-class mining province, a number of very large mines, principally owned by Vale, huge amount of infrastructure there. We have a team together in Brazil that has a deep experience in nickel and also operating in Brazil. Some of those guys here today, Roger Fitzharding, our Exploration and Growth Manager, John Westorp, our CFO, Wayne Foote, our Operations Manager, and Rocky Osborne is gone. He was there. But Rocky's helping us a lot, and a lot of you here today, if you understand nickel and what's happened in Western Australia, you know that Rocky's a bit of a guru, and I think it's fair to say he really likes our project. So over the last 12 months, we've been able to put together this resource, just under 60 million tonnes at about 1% nickel, for a bit over 560,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal. We've then used that to run our scoping studies. With that, we've had a production target of about 30 odd million tonnes, with mill feed sort of at 33 million tonnes at bit over 1%. So that's a really, really good starting position for us. We think that that resource will continue to grow. We've been doing a lot of exploration work. We've probably now pushed out over 100,000 metres of drilling. There was 55,000 metres of drilling when we first acquired this from Vale. We've now put in another 45,000 metres of diamond core drilling into this. That being said, there was probably only about 25,000 metres of our own drilling that went into that resource. So we have a new resource due out at the end of this year, and we're hopeful that that resource will grow pretty significantly. The scoping study for the value add case is presented here. Post-tax NPV 1.1 billion Aussie dollars, IRR 50-odd%, using a pretty conservative nickel price of $7.50 per pound and a 50-cent per pound sulphate premium. We definitely feel that those numbers are erring on the side of conservatism, and I'll share as a show later, there's definitely leverage in this project because of the amount of metal that actually sits in the project. I think fundamentally, we have a 13-year project right now. We will expect that mine life will continue to grow as we drill further. But if we're producing 190 million free cash flow a year and we're doing that over 15 to 20 years, I think we're in pretty good shape. The other really good thing about being in Brazil is that 80% of the power is from renewable sources. That gives us an extremely low carbon footprint, doing all the work on site. And I think that's going to be one of the key drivers for investors going forward. The other aspect is obviously we're in Brazil. We're not here sitting in Cambalda. We're not obviously an Australian project, so we feel that there's a degree of discounting that goes on in our valuations. Probably unwarranted in my own view, but obviously that's a view that's been formed over a long period of time of operating in country in Brazil. It's a very good place to operate, has a strong tenement control system. The Carajás is world class. It has a huge amount of infrastructure, and being in that region, we're being exposed to a very favourable tax rate where we'll only pay 15% tax for the first 10 years of operations. The Brazil government's recently introduced a strategic minerals policy to try to fast-track approvals for strategic minerals, and nickel is one of those minerals. So we're working through with the government on that. That will assist in getting our approvals process through in a more timely manner. So the Carajás, as I said, a number of very large mines there from a copper side of things. Top of page, you've got the Sulphide mine. Centre of screen, Parauapebas is a town of about 250,000 people. Carajás airstrip, where I can fly on a 737 jet into that airstrip. Sealed roads all the way down to where we are, close to Onça Puma. There's sealed roads right to the front gate there. And then there's rail access out to the ports that transports, obviously, the Vale iron ore from S11D and the Serra Norte mine, but also the copper concentrates that come from that region. It's also great to have Oz Minerals in the area. Antis Norte has got a processing float plant for copper there. They're starting to develop the Pedra Branca deposit, and I did see Andrew Cole floating around somewhere this morning, so it's great to have him here at the conference today. So when you're looking at Brazil, the benefit is low-cost power, but obviously that low-cost power comes from an environment where you also have a low emission based on 80% of generation coming from renewables. You can see the size of some of these hydroelectric dams that supply the grid in Brazil. We have a port that we can take our product out of. We have local towns that are well serviced by people who have operated in the mining space for a long period of time because of Vale setting up shop in the Carajás. So there is a really strong mining culture. But you can sort of see from where we're located in that northern part of Brazil, it's a very short hop into the key markets of where this nickel sulphate product is likely to go, which does give us a number of advantages. And from an emissions point of view, this is a work that we've done with Scarn Associates in London, where we've just looked at the carbon intensity. Obviously, right there, you've got all of the nickel pig iron projects, ferronickel in the grey, working into your sulphide projects, and then Jaguar right down on the left-hand side there. So just under 4.7 tonnes of carbon per tonne of nickel equivalent. We're going to be one of the lowest footprints from a nickel production perspective. We're obviously not in production yet, we know that, but we've put a fair bit of work into getting to where these numbers will be. So I think that holds us in very good stead as far as a project that's got scale, that's got mine life, that's going to generate really strong cash flows, but it also has a very low carbon footprint. So the resource, as I touched upon earlier, just over 560,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal. We've converted about 60% of that resource at the moment to production target. We can't call that anything more than that, as this is only a scoping study. It did have a lot of detail that went into that scoping study, but over time we'll look to advance that. We're in the middle of our DFS work right now, which we'll look to deliver next year. Excuse me, but you can see from the image there that the thing that differentiates this is that you've actually got some really nice grade material, but sitting in open pits. So before we have to consider getting into underground mining propositions, we can actually take a lot of this metal out in open pits, and I think that will just allow for a much easier transition into mining life for Centaurus. The underground developments at the moment are really constrained by the resource, which is constrained by the drilling. So the more that we drill at depth and we chase this mineralisation deeper, we'd expect that the resource will grow, and we will expect that the underground developments will continue to grow. Hence why we believe that the initial 13-year mine life will also be able to grow. Just looking at the layout, it's a pretty simple layout. You've got the pits there, Jag South, Jag Central, middle of screen, processing plant, relatively small footprint, integrated waste landform for tails management side of things. So the combination of all this gives us a really low capital intensity of under 15,000 tonne of annual nickel production, paybacks in less than 2 years based on the numbers that we've run at that 750 per pound nickel. So payback's obviously going to be a bit quicker if we continue to see nickel prices where they are. And right now the process flow sheet has, I guess, been optimised for nickel recovery, given that we're taking our product through to con, so from con through to sulphate. And where we've completed the work on the scoping study, we do feel like there's a lot of room to improve on that as we optimise through the definitive feasibility study work. CapEx and OpEx really need to go out and be priced in Brazilian reais. As we price in Brazilian reais, we'd expect the conversion back to US dollars. We'll see some improvements in our CapEx and our OpEx, principally in OpEx through the mining side. The mine schedule at this point in time has really been working down bench by bench. We haven't gone in and fully optimised it for doing starter pits and cutbacks and the like. And the process route, we're still looking at our byproducts and how we deal with that, and what's going to give us the maximum opportunity from a byproduct credit perspective. But looking at a situation where you're at $9 per pound nickel, our NPV is pushing out to a bit over $1.5 billion with an IRR of 70%. So, you know, we've seen those sort of prices. We'd expect through the middle of this decade, when this project's coming on stream, that you will be seeing those prices and plus some. So we do feel like there's still a lot of leverage that Jaguar offers investors at this point in time. For I guess a social license to operate, we're doing a lot of work in the local community. Brazil's got quite a unique royalty structure. 65% of that royalty is going straight into the local municipalities, so they do have I guess a strong backing of mining projects, knowing that it really will be directly benefiting their local community. We've been doing some work with the local municipalities, upgrading the roads, just making them safer. So there's a really positive buy-in on the local communities of where we're operating right now. The environmental impact assessment, which obviously the key document for our approvals process, has now been lodged, and we're working through with the environmental agency to get through that process. And that really for us is a time determining factor to first production. So that's, I guess, a snapshot of what we've defined to date and what the economics look like in relation to that. But we're also doing a lot of exploration work, and the team in Brazil is doing an amazing job. We've got 7 diamond rigs there at the moment, 1 RC rig going, RC rig principally focused on the greenfields targets that are outlined there in green. But the diamond rigs are doing a lot of the infill work to ensure that we can get the resource category up, that when we deliver the DFS, that we've got all of this mineralisation coming across into reserves. But we're also now stepping out and doing some of the deeper drilling, which we didn't do in the first year of picking up the project. There was so much mineralisation close to surface that we wanted to go and test that. We've done that. We've got that into the resource. And now it's about stepping out and really showing that the mineralisation here has got legs. Just point out on that slide there's a couple of key faults, structures running through there, Canard Fault and McCandless Fault, and they do drive a lot of the mineralisation through the whole of the Carajás. And don't get me wrong here, we're not saying that we've got a Salobo type scale deposit, but what the what we've seen from the drilling that Vale have been doing at Salobo is that there's very deep plumbing systems in the Carajás as a result of those regional structures, a lot of vertical mineralisation. And you can see that hole at Salobo that's down around 900 to 1,000 metres deep. It's about 350 metres across in that hole, and just the red section there with the high grade, that was about 150 metres of 1.5% copper and 1.5 grams per tonne gold. So, you know, we do see that these systems are there, and that they're very much, there is very good opportunity for these deep roots to be shown through, and that's what we're going to continue to do at Jaguar as we drill out the nickel, and hopefully we can find more mineralisation as we go deeper. So quickly, just looking at Jaguar South, that's the lion's share of our resource at this point in time. There's about 180,000 tonnes of contained nickel in the Jaguar South open pit and underground areas. You can see the nature of the mineralisation, pretty vertical. We've been able to chase that mineralisation at depth. And one of the things that's really coming through now is we've always known it, is that the EM is a very powerful tool in the Carajás. When you get we've got a new probe there that can now go down to about 750 metres depth, and that's really highlighting that the mineralisation that we see in the pit and where we've gone just below the pit is now likely to extend at depth. And we've got a number of proposed holes that will actually go and test that further. But you can sort of see on the left-hand side of screen, there's 56 metres at 2% nickel with 17 at nearly 5% nickel. You can see some of those grades on that sort of core box there. Another section there, you can start to see the EM conductor plates at depth. There's no reason why this mineralisation doesn't keep going, and we're really excited to be in there and testing those targets further. When we've gone in and tested some of those targets at Jaguar South, we've then gone and used this new probe that we've got on site. It's generated further conductor plates at depth, and you can sort of see where they are. They've gone another 250 metres below the deepest drilling. And as I said, there's no reason to believe that you won't continue to hit semi-massive and massive sulphides in those areas. So a lot of excitement that comes with that. Jaguar Central, again, it's got a whole bunch of mineralisation in the pit. We've been able to then chase that down at depth. There's a shallow plunging chute that you can sort of see in the long section, comes to surface in the west, plunges down to the east, and we've been able to track that now over about 600 metres to the east. So that's pretty exciting for us. We would expect to see some resource growth come from that area. Again, the grades that we see in this area are still really nice. And this is on the regional side of things. We made a new discovery with the RC rig, only going back about a month ago, the Tigri prospect, right down in the southwest corner of the tenement. We've seen mineralisation now over about 700 metres of strike. We've still got to do a lot more work to drill that out, but really, really exciting to see that in the RC chips, but then be able to follow that up with some diamond core drilling. We'll now progressively move to test some of those other targets. Dentry de Sabre is the next prospect, which looks quite interesting. So from a timeline perspective, we're looking to be in production by the end of 2024. We've got to get through the environmental approval process. That's the key part to our timeline. We'll have a resource out at the end of this year, one through the middle of next year. The one in the middle of next year will be the basis for the definitive feasibility study work and what we'll base our reserves on. So a lot of work that the guys have got to do over the next little while. Won't spend too long on this. We've got good research coverage. We've got good support on our shareholder base, and we've got a market cap of around $350 million, which we think, you know, is pretty much underdone relative to the value of the project. So we're nickel focused. We've got a very low carbon footprint here at Jaguar. We're in the Carajás, which gives us a number of huge advantages in respect to infrastructure. We've got a very significant resource already, but we expect that that resource will continue to grow. We've already got a 13-year mine life. As I say, I'd expect that that's pushing out sort of 15 to 20 years as we do more work on the resource. The economics already look great. but with higher nickel prices and some of the other optimisation work that we do, we hopefully see that continue to lift. So that's about us. Thanks very much.